Well, well, well. Another large gap between Unbroken Glass uploads. Who could have seen that one coming? Alright, look, let's just ignore the fact that this video was supposed to be done almost 3 months ago. I be a busy man sometimes. If there was a male term for girl fail, that's what I'd be. Wait, is there a male term for girl fail? Really? Male fail? That's the best you could come up with? The point is, I really wish I could have uploaded more over the past couple months, but school sucks, we all know that. We all know college is meant to drain you of everything. Your time, your money, your energy, your will to live. If there truly is such a thing as an afterlife, then I'm willing to bet the soul of everyone who's ever attended college post-1980s is tormenting Ronald Reagan in hell as we speak. Ah shit, I'm getting off track again. Point is, I have a lot to cover today, and that's why this video took so long to make. I mean, yeah, sure, I could have just done what I did with my winter video and made it a short montage of PNGs, but in truth, I was actually pretty happy with how my last seasonal ranking video turned out. I mean, yeah, it's not the greatest thing ever made or anything, but I really don't think I could settle for anything less after that. Now, after I'd missed my October deadline to release this video, I kinda wasn't sure how to go about it. I thought maybe of merging it with the inevitable fall video that I've got planned, but that would likely be over an hour long, and with how exhausted I was after finishing my last video that was over an hour long, I really didn't feel like doing that again. Plus, hey, this lets me space out my uploads just a tiny bit more, and maybe milk those sweet views a little more. Thanks for the views on the Sonic and Shadow Generations video, by the way. So yeah, here we are, ranking everything I watched and played over the summer months of 2024, that being July, August, and September. All in all, I've got about 11 things to cover, which is actually quite a step down from last season, but the catch is, I have a lot more to say about the stuff from these months. So, this video is very likely going to be 30 minutes again. Fuck. Ah, whatever. You'll only live once, may as well work hard. I'm Unbroken Glass, kiss my ass. This is what I watched and played over the summer of 2024. Number 1, Mad Max 3, Beyond Thunderdome. If you recall, last June I watched the first 2 Mad Max movies for the first time, and I really loved them, especially 2, and now I finished the remaining 3, including Furiosa. I have a lot to talk about with all these movies, mostly me gushing about how great they all are. Well, most of them. Okay, so Mad Max 3, Beyond Thunderdome. Why didn't they call it Enter the Thunderdome instead? Whatever. Okay, before we really get into it, I don't think it's bad. Just very aggressively okay, or disappointing. I heard that George Miller didn't want to make this one, so I can't really hold too much of it against him. I hate doing stuff as an obligation, too. I mean, shit, just look at my Sonic Movie 3 review. And I do think the first chunk of the movie in Bartertown is engaging, and the chase at the end is also okay, but feels like a worse version of the chase from the second movie. The thing is, once the actual Thunderdome scene happened, it kinda just was downhill from there, especially after Max leaves Bartertown. It's all been said before how much of an insane left turn the movie takes around the halfway point, bordering on childish. Something being geared more towards all ages isn't a bad thing, of course. I mean, I'm a Nintendo fan after all, but for Mad Max, it just feels off-putting. So yeah, Mad Max 3 just kinda lacks the sauce the other movies have. Again, not a bad movie, but I really don't feel like rewatching it anytime soon. 6.5 out of 10. Who fucking cares though? Let's talk about Fury Road. Mad Max Fury Road is a movie I should have watched a very long time ago. I can probably describe my experience with it as the opposite of Thunderdome. At the beginning, it had me interested, but not hooked yet. By the halfway point, it definitely had its claws in me, and during the climax, I thought, yeah, this is one of the best movies of all time. It just keeps ramping up and getting better as it goes on, all without a super crazy plot, mind you. It's just beautiful, plain and simple. Yeah, when I say beautiful, I'm talking about the sandstorm scene. It keeps you well on the edge of your seat, too. You know, why am I even bothering? You all already know how truly phenomenal this movie is, and if you haven't seen it yet, watch it ASAP. You don't even necessarily need to have seen the older ones first. I mean, it helps and will make it more rewarding, but if you don't have the time, don't worry. All in all, easily the best thing covered in this video, and honestly the second best thing I've covered all year period, just below Whiplash. Strong, solid, furious 10 out of 10. And that brings us to number 3, Furiosa, what might be the last Mad Max movie I'll ever be able to watch for the first time. And yeah, I still regret not being able to see it in theaters. But hey, hindsight's 20/20, I suppose. I should have planned ahead better. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this one. I'd probably put it in between the first and second movies in terms of quality. You know, it doesn't have the highs of Fury Road or 2, but I'd say it's also more consistently good than, say, Mad Max 1 and especially 3. I think my only major complaint would probably just be that the pacing is kinda off. Some scenes get sped through really quickly, while others feel like they get way more time than they needed. But hey, the characters are still great. The villain in this movie is particularly great. It's just a genuinely great movie, what can I say? I love Furiosa as a character. She's probably one of my favorite protagonists of anything I've seen this year so far. I mean, shoot, what more is there to say, really? Just go watch these movies, you won't regret it at all. 8.5 out of 10. Alright, that's everything I saw in the summer in terms of movies. I got through that segment pretty quickly, honestly. Not a whole lot really to talk about. Wait, what the fuck are those? Yeah, so I got bored on 2 different days and just kinda randomly decided to watch 2 movies that aren't considered very good. What compelled me to? Who cares? Let's talk about 80 for Brady. 80 for Brady is really dumb and ridiculous and stupid, and I don't even like football either. And I kinda enjoyed it. It might be really dumb and masturbatory to Tom Brady and the Patriots, but it's also a genuinely feel-good time. I had fun watching it in spite of the dumb stuff. I liked it, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. It's not an amazing movie, of course, but who cares? Not everything has to be a magnificent work of art that pushes the boundaries of filmmaking to new heights. If you only ever focus on the best of the best, you'll miss out on the more simple parts of life. And before you know it, you'll also be 80 years old and regret your life up to that point. Okay, well, probably not, but what if? Anyway, I wish the real-life women this movie is based on the best in life. 7.5 out of 10. And from talking about old women to people turning old, here's number 4, Old, 2021. Or as you more likely know it as, the movie about the beach that makes you old. Unlike 80 for Brady, which I know isn't a great movie, but enjoyed regardless, I know this is a terrible movie, and I found it to be a terrible watch. But it's so interesting because it feels like several different types of bad movies. It's so extremely incompetently made that it manages to be both funny bad and boring bad, or just regular bad, all at the same time. I haven't seen any other M. Night Shyamalan movies prior to this one. I mean, I guess I saw a little bit of Avatar: The Last Airbender with my brother, but it was so bad that he ended up saying something sexist that I don't fully remember within earshot of my mom, and she was none too happy about that. Also, he was 14 when it happened. Don't track him down and cancel him. Anyway, my point is, I only know stuff about the director through cultural osmosis. The difference between him and another director I complained about last time, though, that being Zack Snyder, is that Shyamalan doesn't have the same kind of weird-ass cult following for him in his movies. I think, anyway. So yeah, The Beach That Makes You Old. This movie is so stupid, and any genuinely interesting moments are not meant to last. Just like an old person. Okay, it has a few good scenes or shots that were almost worth sitting through the rest of the movie for, and I guess it did manage to maintain a small level of engagement from me throughout, but who cares? There was never a moment where I wished I wasn't 5 seconds from the credits rolling. I was actively despairing as I checked how much time was left in the movie, only to find out I was nowhere even halfway done, and I didn't even go this one alone. I hit up a friend and asked her if she wanted to watch it with me. Lucy, thank you for your service. By the way, your sacrifice of free time will not be forgotten. Now, as for the score, I don't know. I genuinely can't pin down how I feel. I'm leaning towards a 3 out of 10, but I'm not even sure about that. This movie kinda broke me, and I just have nothing else to say about it, except for the fact that it's still far better than Rebel Moon Parts 1 and 2.
Video games teach hand-eye coordination, which is why I now have cat-like reflexes.
Number 1, Super Mario RPG. I'm kind of ashamed to admit that I've owned Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars for over 8 years and never came even close to finishing it. In fact, I remember struggling with it, if anything, and never got past where you recruit Geno. Let me let that sink in for a moment. I struggled with Super Mario RPG as a teen. The most beginner-friendly RPG I can think of short of Final Fantasy IV Easy type. And mind you, I finished Earthbound in my teens, and that is way more challenging. My theory? Well, I didn't really play many RPGs on Wii U or home consoles in general until around 2019. I played quite a few on handhelds, and it's a damn shame I didn't use my Vita more for that specifically back in junior high and high school. Getting back to Mario though, I finally rectified my mistake. I bought the Switch remake and beat it in a few days flat. As much as I'd like to have actually beaten the SNES original, there's no going back now. I am all in on the Switch remake, and I don't think I can look back outside of playing the OG on an actual SNES on a CRT. Both games are still beautiful though, don't get me wrong. Yeah, minus the copious frame rate drops of the remake. God, the Switch 2 cannot come soon enough. Now, this game is incredibly easy, yes, and it is very short, so unless you want to seek out the more difficult post-game content, you won't get very much out of this if you prefer more difficult strategic RPGs like Shin Megami Tensei, XCOM, or Baldur's Gate. But it makes up for all of that in sheer whimsy and fun. It's a damn good time from start to finish, with really no sour spots, even at its most repetitive. And of course, you can't forget the charm that comes with it being a Mario game. The humor arguably still holds up to this day, the music is catchy, and all the characters are memorable. Geno still isn't getting to Smash though, keep dreaming. All in all, Super Mario RPG is an excellent game that I should have finished, a long time ago. And the Switch version is an excellent remake. 9 out of 10. I am officially in Mario RPG hell now. Thousand Year Door remake, here I come. Okay, that was pretty simple. What's next? Oh no. Number 2, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. This section will contain heavy spoilers for this entire DLC, so skip here if you wish to avoid. Okay, before I get into this, I must specify this was all written in July, months before the Game Awards even had the nominees announced. So, nothing about that influenced my opinion at the time of writing this. In fact, my opinion on the DLC hasn't been swayed in general by the Game Awards. I just figured I should clarify that. So, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. It's big, it's beautiful, it's brutal, but is it good? Well, maybe it is when the frame rate isn't having a heart attack. I don't really know where to start with this one. Elden Ring was already a game I could spend hours talking about. Now they just dropped this big-ass DLC campaign on me, loaded with content, and I've tried my best to explore as much of it as I can. I haven't seen every area yet, or fought every boss yet, but what I have seen has been jaw-dropping. If you thought Elden Ring was a beautiful-looking game before, God, just you wait until you see some of the scenery here. It's so breathtaking that my PS5 can barely keep up. Am I really gonna have to upgrade to a PS5 Pro? Oh, and those bosses! I gotta talk about them. I'll just go with the ones that were most memorable to me right now, though. The Divine Beast Dancing Lion was an incredibly fun and creative fight to me, utilizing weather changing, and just in general a really cool moveset. I think this is meant to be one of the first bosses that you'll fight, and for an early game boss, it's not half bad. Rellana. Oh, this is an insane fight. She's lightning fast, and I had yet to collect many Scadutree fragments when I fought her, so she hit me like a truck. But I can forgive her because badass swordswomen is an incredible trope. Phase 2 made me feel like I was fighting a Demon Slayer character when she whips out the fire and ice swords and just fucking goes to town on you, and it actually pushes the mechanics a little, doing the unthinkable and making you use the jump button to dodge something for once. Midas. The lead up to this boss's dungeon is worth mentioning as well. I love stealth games and also feeling utterly terrified. Absolutely insane boss, one of the most grotesque too. Mesmer was honestly surprising just to figure out he existed at all, but does not slack in the fight department. I really need to go back and face him without summons at some point, honestly. but my favorite fight in the game is easily Bale. In fact, he might just dethrone Godfrey, who, mind you, was one of my favorite bosses of all time, if not my absolute favorite boss in all of gaming, that I've at least fought thus far. Much like Godfrey, this was the fight I had the most fun just learning how to dodge the attacks of. His attacks are well telegraphed, but still not easy to dodge in both Phase 1 and 2. Oh, and speaking of Phase 2, I alluded to this in my previous seasonal ranking, but the first time I saw his phase transition, I went apeshit. For the second time that week. I'm fighting this guy thinking, damn, those wings must be useless. He can't even fly with them. Wait, what the fuck is he doing?
This is the greatest game of all time.
I haven't fought Dark Eater Madir or the Demon Princes yet, but I might have to now just to see the origins of this absolutely phenomenal fight. And then, of course, we have the fight that broke Elden Ring players, Consort Radahn, a fight that almost took me 2 weeks to beat. He's fast, he's strong as hell, he literally has a 75% chance of lunging at you like a Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare at the start of the fight, and that's just Phase 1. Once a Snow Bunny mind control twink enters the ring, fucking forget about standing a chance. The attacks here are so intense, it actually makes the game lag, even on a PS5. Or at least it used to. Oh, thank God, I'm almost done with that fight. Wait, where did he go?
Meteor strike!
Fuck this game. Oh, but the music though. Oh, and the lore revelations of this fight. I'm so surprised I didn't pick up on the details sooner. God, when I finally got their asses, it was pure euphoria. And yes, I beat him pre-patch. I felt so great and accomplished, even if the cutscene I got for winning was bare bones as hell. But man, I was just so happy to have finally won. And then 30 minutes passed and I was like,
Now what?
once that initial excitement wore off, I was kinda at a loss for how to feel. I felt hollow, in a sense. I had just cleared what seemed to me like an insurmountable challenge, and in the blink of an eye, that sense of accomplishment was gone. You know how on New Year's Eve you get really excited leading up to midnight, and then once 12 a.m. hits, you start celebrating like it's a big deal, only to go to bed 1 minute later? That's sorta how it felt. Was it because I used Mimic Tear? Probably not, because I used it throughout the entire DLC and barely cared. Or was the boss secretly terribly designed, and I felt like I only won in spite of my skill rather than because of it? Who knows. I did at least consider it a memorable boss fight in spite of any flaws. I think I just felt burnt out though, honestly. I had just fought through hordes upon hordes of some of the most aggressive and challenging motherfuckers, not just bosses. Regular enemies will wreck your shit too. In fact, I think my favorite area is the only one with no enemies at all, the Shaman Village. As soon as I set foot in here for the first time, it was like time stopped, and I couldn't really focus on anything but taking in my surroundings. Is this what being at peace feels like? I thought afterwards, maybe if I play something slower and more basic, yet still familiar, like Demon's Souls, I'll have a better time. Then I booted it up and realized, wait a minute, I hate Demon's Souls. It's crazy, though, because after beating Elden Ring, a game with a similarly divisive final boss, I still couldn't get enough of it, or really Souls games in general. I kept playing Elden Ring as much as possible. I went through New Game Plus. I even went back to Dark Souls 1 and Sekiro 2 and had a great time there. After beating Elden Ring, I could not get enough of Elden Ring. After beating Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, I wanted nothing to do with Elden Ring. Maybe I'm being overdramatic, who knows, and hey, this DLC isn't perfect. I mentioned performance before, and yeah, it's bad. I'm actually morbidly curious to see how it runs on base PS4, if it even runs at all, but would I say it was all worth it in the end? Yeah, I'm satisfied with what we got. Is it as good as the base game? Maybe not, but I'm comfortable with sticking a 9.5 out of 10 on it and never looking back. I think I'm taking a good long break from Souls-likes for now. Except for Sekiro, because I want nothing more than to finish that game because it is so much fun. Number 3, Tunic. Tunic has a stamina meter and a dodge, and enemies that respawn after you rest, and heals that replenish with difficult bosses. God fucking damn it, not again. Okay, no, I'm actually just kidding. To call Tunic a Souls-like is actually pretty disingenuous if I'm being honest. In fact, I'll just come out and say it. This is my second favorite indie game of all time now. So one day while I was browsing the PlayStation Store, I happened to see that Eternite was on sale for a pretty reasonable price, and then I saw that Tunic was also on sale for a even lower price. And after thinking about it for a moment, I chose Tunic. As if any sane soul wouldn't pick Tunic in that scenario. And after buying it, I ended up plowing through it in about 3 days, having the time of my life. The best way I think I can describe Tunic is... Actually, no, I don't want to describe it, because if I do, I might just be robbing you of a blind experience of this game. Ignore the part where I just talked about endgame spoilers for something massively popular that's still less than half a year old. I guess I have to sell you on it somehow, so picture this. The experience of Zelda 1, but drastically modernized. Not just the game itself, but playing the game. And that's all I'm gonna say about it anyway. Tunic is a 10 out of 10, thank you for your time, go play it. Number 4, Shadow of the Colossus. Ooh, this is actually kinda interesting now that we have confirmation the creator is working on another game. Do I think Shadow of the Colossus is a masterpiece? Well, maybe if they removed this fucking thing. Okay, no, I fully agree that this is an extremely important game that deserves its legacy and reputation. It may be mostly bosses, but it has some of the most memorable boss fights of all time, and the fourth Colossus. It looks incredible, no matter what version you're playing, and the story still manages to be very simple, yet very effective because of the short length. It's a great game, but would I consider it one of the best I've ever played?
Not this time.
When Shadow of the Colossus' gameplay loop is great, it's really, really good. Like, I can't believe I owned this game for nearly 3 years and just didn't play it until now. Shame on me. But I'm also really glad it lasts just 7 hours instead of double that, because I have no idea if I could handle such a thing. I really started to feel burnt out the closer I got to the end. Also, fuck the fourth Colossus, I still can't stress that enough. Still though, like I said, a lot of them were memorable. I think my favorite bosses were number 5, number 9, number 10, 13, and of course 16. Maybe if I go back and retry this game, I'll grow a bit more fond of it, since I have a friend who said she felt similarly to how I did at first, but now loves it significantly more. I'm not opposed to a second playthrough with how short it is, after all. Before I slap on a score, though, I want to end on a quick crackpot conspiracy theory. Everyone likes to compare Sonic Frontiers to easy targets like Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Nier Automata, Genshin. But have you ever noticed that it is kinda similar to Shadow of the Colossus? Think about it. Semi, but not fully open world with grassy, wet, rocky, and sandy biomes. Your main objective is to kill these gigantic ancient beasts just because some voice in the sky told you to do so in order to rescue your friend or friends. You have to climb to the top of said giant beasts, albeit for different reasons, and both games just so happen to share a very similar endgame plot twist. Am I saying Sonic Team took inspiration from Shadow of the Colossus when developing Frontiers? I don't know, I have no proof. Also, I'm in no way saying Frontiers is as good as Shadow of the Colossus. I'm sorry, Frontiers fans. Anyway, 8.5 out of 10. Number 5, Coffee Talk. I don't remember what drew me to this game, but at some point in 2023, it just kinda caught my eye. And I'm not that big into visual novels, but this, short, sweet, kept me invested enough just to see it out to the end. I also love coffee, so maybe I'm just channeling something here. Get this on sale if you can. Have a good time, relax, just don't get caffeine toxicity. 8.5 out of 10. Number 6, Ys 8. So, I wrote an entire script for this game a few days before finishing it, and as I was finishing up an optional dungeon, I realized I needed to scrap that script. A few of you might remember that back in March, I ended up binging almost every canon Ys game, but stopped after 7 because I didn't want to spoil the experience of 8 due to burnout. Coming back to it now, though, I could immediately tell it was clicking for me way more than when I first tried it, and it was guaranteed to overtake Origins as my favorite in the series. And throughout my playthrough, I kept thinking, yeah, this is really good, but it's a little held back by the raids, and the story isn't anything that spectacular. I'm feeling high A tier, but something happened. Ys 8 is easily the longest and most content-packed thus far in the series. I would even say that's true after 10. It took me about 42 hours to beat the main game and finish every side quest and dungeon. It kind of felt, though, like the game was never ending, like it just kept going and would never stop. I thought it was ramping up for the climax, only to find out I was wrong. Several times. And yes, I did say I finished every side quest, which is a relative rarity for me in any game, let alone RPGs. And as I got closer to the true ending, I realized something. I didn't just keep enjoying Ys 8 more and more as it went on. I didn't want it to end. I actually didn't want to finish the game because I was starting to love it too much. This is an extraordinarily rare thing for me. Most times, I'm actually wanting a game to just be over with by the time it's reaching the climax, and if that's not the case, it's either because I found an ideal sweet spot for length, or I felt it was so short that it was actually a detriment. With Ys 8, I feel like it could have lasted 10 to 20 more hours, and I wouldn't feel any differently about it, provided it stayed as consistently good. I mentioned an optional dungeon earlier, and as I was fighting the last boss of that dungeon, I finally accepted with open arms that Ys 8 is a masterpiece. I wouldn't have said this about a week before beating it, but I don't know what else to say. Yeah, I have my complaints with it still, but even my biggest ones, like the raids interrupting progress, seem like minor nitpicks to me in hindsight, especially since I grew to enjoy the combat so much more, simple as it may be. Narratively, it's not the most wild thing ever, but it works well, and you start to feel a connection to Adol and his team. And yes, I have heard certain people complain about the localization, but frankly, I don't fucking care about that kind of discourse. Of all the things for alt-right weirdos and borderline lolicons to latch onto, localization discourse is probably the most tiring of all. I will admit, the story didn't hit me as hard until things were finally starting to shift towards the actual climax, but there were always things I heavily loved about it. The cast of main characters was nothing short of extremely memorable to me, making what would be otherwise a simple narrative much more emotionally charged and even a little tear-jerking. And of course, I did go out of my way to rescue every castaway, and I'm glad I did, as even they bring interesting elements to the table. Exploration is easily the best part of the gameplay, whether in dungeons or the massive overworld. I made damn sure to hit 100% map completion, and I loved every bit of it, but come on, we all know the real best part of Ys 8. It's the soundtrack, which has risen to my favorite video game soundtrack of all time? Question mark? Which, mind you, is no easy feat. So yeah, when I think about Ys 8, maybe I don't think of it being the greatest game ever made or anything. I think it only just barely cracks my top 25 of all time. But it is the most memorable that I've played in quite a long time, and it took me a while before I was truly ready to say goodbye to it. There's an optional post-game dungeon, and I genuinely almost cried while at work because I was thinking about the song that plays within that dungeon and how it all felt as a reflection of my journey. But once I finally defeated the last boss of said dungeon, and also cleaned up a dungeon I'd forgotten about, I finally felt satisfied with and ready to part ways with Ys 8. All of this is to say that you truly need to give it a try if you like action-adventure games, even if you have no interest in playing any other Ys game. I'd say avoid the Switch and Vita versions, though. The Switch port is pretty mediocre in both fidelity and performance, as Falcom handed it and Ys 9 off to a third party that didn't exactly do the two games justice. And while the Vita version is competent, as the game was actually built with its limitations in mind, it's missing content that was added to the PS4 version and every subsequent port, notably the optional and post-game dungeons I mentioned earlier, the former of which being easily the best dungeon in the game. If you really want me to sell you on this game, though, I'd genuinely cry after listening to any song in the game, even a month after finishing it, anytime I'd think about the ending, anytime that Ys 8 remotely entered my mind at all. That would be enough to just get me emotional. With that, I think I'm comfortable saying goodbye for now, Ys 8. Thank you for everything. 10 out of 10. So, that kind of wraps up this video. Of course, the fall video is next up in line, and I can't say if I'll have it done in time, but I'll try everything in my power to get it done within a week. Until then, though, y'all have a good one, and take care.